What does Chad think about Frost?
Frost, the cryptography kind of implementation of Schnorr.
I guess so. Yeah,
I guess so.
Shiv Sikanevika. I don't know. Can you maybe expand on your question a little bit? Just make sure we're answering the right question.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, unless there's more detail that comes in. So if you don't know, just to clue people into the context of the question, there is a certain type of cryptography or certain kind of uh, I'm trying to keep this like non-technical, but like type of signing algo called Schnorr, and there's implementation called Frost, and which, by the way, that's what Chainflip uses to sign their stuff. And Frost is actually like a really good, relative to the rest of the market, it's actually a really good option. We're actually thinking about using Frost ourselves on THORChain. And by the way, we might even use Chainflip's implementation of Frost and borrow back from them. That may or may not happen. We're looking into it now. But yeah, Frost is actually a really good thing to use. The problem is that Schnorr is not really supported natively on things like, Bitcoin and Ethereum, like all the main kind of chains. Those are all what's called like ECDSA. And they're not really compatible, except Bitcoin had added support for something called Taproot later in life, which does support Schnorr style signatures. And so we might be using Frost for that purpose. And you can also on Ethereum, because it's a smart contract, L1, you can create a little bit of a shim layer, so to speak, between the ECDSA signing and the Schnorr signing. So you can create like a smart contract that you do a Schnorr signature with the contract, and the contract, so to speak, does a ECDSA sign with the chain itself. So, and the reason why we're considering of using that is because Schnorr is like really one of the best cryptographies that we have now in this industry in some ways. And that's largely because it's like very, very, like it's relatively speaking, it's very, very simple. And if something is very simple, it has very small surface area. If it's a small surface area, it's easier to secure, right? It's less kind of nooks and crannies to look into or orientate yourself to like find nooks and crannies that can be orientated against each other to cause some sort of exploit or problem. So we are in the process with the THORChain team to investigate different libraries that exist in the open source libraries that exist in the sphere for both DKLS and for Frost/Schnorr. And we're going to be implementing at least one of those in the near future. The problem is that one of the things that we'd like to have in our world, in THORChain world, is we have to have something called identifiable aborts. And a lot of libraries don't support identifiable aborts. Now, let me quickly explain what that is. Identifiable aborts is that when one person is intentionally screwing up the key sign or key gen process of trying to sign something or generate a new private key, we can identify who is aborting the system and say, hey, you, Kenton, you midway through this process, you just ditched us and ran away and broke the whole thing. We need to be able to identify who it is so we can slash that person or that node or whatever and, carry on. If we don't have the ability to do that, it's not like the end of the world necessarily, but we prefer a situation where we can identify who of our nodes is causing the problem on our network.
That's what key sign failures are, right? When we see those?
Yeah, key sign failures, key gen failures, we see those, and those happen naturally. So, like that's the thing that happens more or less all the time, but we just want to be able to identify, because if there's one asshole that's doing it especially in a malicious context, we want to know who that is so that we can get them the hell out of our network, right? The thing is that a lot of the people, the companies or systems that use these systems, like Frost and whatever, they're not decentralized protocols. They are centralized companies, oftentimes, like using it for internal purposes, like Coinbase, for example. And they don't really care about identifiable aborts because all the entities that are signing are trusted. They're all friends. We all know each other. We're all best buds, right? But because for us, we don't have any methodology of identifying who is a node and who's our friend and who's not our friend, in a sense. And so we have to identify them in another way to make sure that they're not going to be malicious in one form or another. So we have to look into this, and we might have to, change a library. We started to do this for DKLS. I think in the end of 2025, we hired Silence Labs to generate Science Labs is like one of the like premier DKLS implementation labs in the world, really, to make an edit to DKLS, 23, to have additional rounds of signing, just so that we can identify who was the malicious person, or people them, or maybe it is a person just made a mistake or whatever, lost the internet or whatever. Who was the person that kind of screwed up the process, So we were working on that with months, like back in 25, so that we could replace GG20 with DKLS. But yes, the THORChain is actively a part of this process. We are having meetings and discussing this, from time to time, and we're going to be actively working to actually add in Frost and add in DKLS when we can. So Frost would be like probably the top priority in the sense of what's most valuable to the protocol. Get Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the EVMs on the Frost base signing, because that's the most secure in our, like, at least in my opinion. And I think a lot of cryptographers would probably agree with me on this. And then when we can't use Schnorr signatures and we have to use ECDSA signatures, we use DKLS, because that's simpler than GG20's implementation. It's a little bit smaller surface area and it's easier to secure for that reason. And then and hopefully just get rid of GG20 entirely, or possibly use GG20 for the whole like multi-sig thing we were talking about like a month ago, whatever, where you have like a multi-sig, but each one of the signing keys, like a 2 of 2 multi-sig, but each one of the signing keys is like a different cryptography. One might be DKLS, one might be GG20, and you need both of these things to sign in order for the multi-sig to like, send the transaction. And the benefit of doing this is that you become like really secure, because even if you find an exploit in GG20 or you find an exploit in DKLS, it's not enough. You got to find a 0-day in both cryptographies at the same time, which you can imagine is a lot more difficult than just finding in one.
Yeah.
Whether we actually do that or not remains to be seen. I think the goal for right now is just like, well, we have to implement Schnorr/Frost. We have to implement DKLS. So let's just get that done as like a stepping stone in the right direction. And then once we're off of GG20 entirely, we can come back to the table and have a conversation like, is it worth the time, energy, technical complexity, so forth and so on, to do this whole multi-sig, idea?
What if we did, like, we have a handful of tokens on Frost, a handful of tokens DKLS, handful of tokens on GG20. There could be one vault for each token, but instead of having different vaults, we've got the 3 different cryptographies. So
Yep.
fine, somebody might find an exploit in one of the cryptographies, but only those tokens would be affected. And the other 2, in theory, would be safe. It'd be kind of like maybe a happy medium between going from, instead of having multiple vaults, we just have multiple cryptographies, but be monovault.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a vault per cryptography rather than a vault.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's almost like what you're saying, and in other words, you're saying is you're diversifying your portfolio, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's one downturn and one, it doesn't take them all out, which there's benefits to that mentality. You can't do that necessarily with GG20, because you can't have a single vault for GG20, because you can really only have like 20 nodes signing in a or technically a little bit less than that.
Okay.
So you couldn't really do it in that case, just because there's too many rounds of signing, there's too many like complicated kind of computationally intense things happening, which is why we each one of our vaults is like 20 nodes in a per vault scenario. DKLS is a lot more efficient, and you can have 100 nodes in a single vault, and it signs, probably just fine. You could do like DKLS and Schnorr, right? You could theoretically do that. But if you do the multi-sig thing with the 2, then you kind of get the best of all the worlds, right? And you don't lose any money if you expose DKLS to some 0-day, and you lose like half your funds theoretically, right?
Yeah.
In this scenario, you wouldn't lose any of it, because you have to break both of them, which is even harder than breaking one.
Yeah. Well, and like, speaking of the Frost implementation, it is being implemented already with Monero, right? That's going to be Frost. So it
is, but the Frost implementation for Monero is like kind of a customized. It's not the standard Frost. It's like it's a kind of weird one-off Monero specific or implementation of Frost. So technically, we would have XMR Frost, and then we'd have like generic, ECDSA Frost. Or sorry, not
Okay.
ECDSA, generic Schnorr Frost.
Yeah.
And so like we'd actually have two different Frost implementations in our code base because of that.
Okay, got it. So then, okay, so we got, he has a follow-up question here. So after all of that, Chad, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it to build Schnorr Frost? The general Frost, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think I can answer with any kind of accuracy. I am not a cryptographer. I've never stated that I am a cryptographer. I'm an engineer by heart. So I don't really have a clear sense of it, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I would never want to build it myself. I am just not, equipped to build that. I will openly admit, I would always rely on people who are, right? And so using a library that Coinbase built, because they're, really smart people over there, or Silence Labs, who are, professionals in this area, is much better off than asking somebody like me to build a, or even asking ChatGPT. Like I wouldn't trust ChatGPT to do this. It's too technical. It's too mathematical. The models are not strong enough to do this effectively, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So not yet. Maybe there'll come a day that won't be the case. You can use it, but I would just lean on the pros, which I am not one of them.
And so this is what THORChain Labs would help us with, right?
Yeah.
They'd be able to bridge the gap from the Coinbase library or the Silence Labs library and apply it to THORChain. They would make it work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're much more cryptographers than I am, although not most of them are not necessarily professional cryptographers. There's a deeper understanding than I do. And so we might pull in additional help from another team to be an aid or assist sort of labs to help them with that process, potentially, maybe. It depends on the maturity of the library. If we have to make edits to it, which I hope not, because I would prefer we just take a standard issue off the shelf, open source implementation of whatever Schnorr or whatever. I hope that's the case. They're investigating that. They're doing research into different libraries and their implementation details, and they're coming back with some results to me. I think like in a week or two.
Cool.